Salvete, and welcome back to Weekly Roman History. In the last few videos, we've watched the Republic destabilize due to military overreach, popular unrest, and the rise of warlords with personal power that overshadows the power of the legitimate government. Marius and Sulla's personal disputes turned into a full civil war, which resulted in Sulla twice marching his personal armies on Rome itself and taking it by military force. Sulla became a permanent dictator and killed his political enemies through proscription. Even though he left a restored republic in place when he retired, the blueprint has been set. Every warlord now knows how to topple the government and set up his own dictatorship. In this video, we will track the competition and uneasy cooperation between three such warlords: Pompey, Crassus, and Caesar, also known as the First Triumvirate. Here's our roadmap. Pompey and Crassus build up their wealth and reputations as rival warlords. Pompey consistently outperforms Crassus, especially in the war against Spartacus and a campaign against Piracy. But optimate fears of another hostile takeover lead them to push back against Pompey and another young warlord in the making, Julius Caesar. In response, Caesar proposes an alliance between himself, Pompey, and Crassus, the First Triumvirate. The Triumvirs are incredibly successful at bending Rome to their will, so successful that each member starts to maneuver himself to overpower the other two and claim sole control. Crassus dies in a military defeat, leaving Caesar in Gaul and Pompey in Rome. Pompey tries to order Caesar to disband his army, but Caesar marches on Rome instead. Pompey flees before facing Caesar in the east, and Caesar defeats him to become the unquestioned ruler of Rome. Okay, let's get to know our Triumvirs. First, Pompey. Gnaeus Pompeius is the son of a Novus Homo, Gnaeus Pompeius Strabo. The older Pompey was a non-Roman like Marius, who achieved great military success, especially in the social war, and his son was often at his side. When the father dies, our Pompey takes over the loyalty of his legions. He essentially inherits a personal army. When Sulla marches on Rome the second time in 82 BCE, Pompey and his legions join him. Sulla then sends Pompey to Sicily and Africa to deal with some allies of Marius, where Pompey earns the nickname Young Butcher. Sulla asks Pompey to disband his army and return home, but Pompey demands he be given a triumph. This is inappropriate for a number of reasons. Triumphs are for foreign wars, not civil wars, because you don't have a public celebration about killing fellow Romans. And triumphs are for consuls and ex-consuls. Pompey has never held public office. He's under 25. But Pompey insists, and Sulla allows the triumph. After his triumph, Pompey grants himself a cognomen. His family isn't Roman, so he only has two names, Gnaeus Pompeius. He adds Magnus, the Great, like Alexander the Great, his hero. So that's Pompey. He's powerful, he's full of himself, and he forces everyone to go along with his will. Next, Crassus. Marcus Licinius Crassus is another son of a newly rich father who uses inherited wealth and influence to build an army. But when he joins Sulla in 82, he only has half a legion. He's very much a junior partner, not as impressive as Pompey. So Pompey gets the nod to go to Sicily and Africa, and Pompey gets the triumph afterward. But both Crassus and Pompey are able to enrich themselves with Sulla's proscriptions. Crassus builds further wealth through many streams, especially slave trafficking and land, and most famously, as a firefighter. Crassus puts together one of Rome's first fire brigades, but not as a public service. When a building is on fire, he rides up and talks the owner into selling him the property on the cheap. He only puts out the fire when he's reached a deal. It's a monstrous scheme, and it makes him very rich. But try as he might, Crassus can never rise above Pompey. So that's Crassus, a wealthy criminal with no scruples who lives perpetually in the shadow of the more influential Pompey. And finally, there's Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar's family is patrician, a branch of the Julii that hasn't had much influence in a few centuries. He's the youngest of the three Triumvirs, and the only one to have been allied with Marius in the Civil War, though he dropped him like a bad habit as soon as it was clear which way the wind was blowing. I already told you about Caesar's precedent-breaking election as Pontifex Maximus, chief priest, before he'd even been praetor. But there's a story I want to tell you about him from before all this. Caesar was once captured by pirates. He'd spent some time overseas to stay out of Sulla's crosshairs, and was on his way home after Sulla's death. Piracy is a big problem on the Mediterranean Sea. The pirates steal things from boats and ransom captives back to their native cities, especially Romans who command the biggest ransoms. So a group of pirates takes Caesar, and gets ready to send a ransom demand to his family in Rome. When Caesar hears what they're asking, he tells them to double it. He's more valuable than that. Now, getting messages around the Mediterranean takes time, so while they wait for Caesar's family to get the letter and pay up, Caesar hangs out with the pirates. They play dice, he reads them his writing, they drink. They like the guy. I've told you this about Caesar. He's one of those weirdly likable people. Everyone who meets him thinks he's just the best. But the whole time he's palling around with these pirates, he tells them, "As soon as I get back to Rome, I'm going to raise a private navy, hunt you down, and crucify you." They laugh. Oh, this noble Roman with his bluster. But of course, when he gets back to Rome, Caesar does exactly what he said he would. His private navy finds his pirates, and he has them crucified. Though as a sign of mercy, he has their throats cut first. So that's Caesar. This man is a force of nature. He can charm anybody, but it all means nothing to him. He'll cut your throat the next minute. Those are our players, the men whose power struggles will destroy the Republic for good. Now to the main part of our story. We start in 73 BCE, when a group of gladiators in training escape a school in Capua. Their leader is a Thracian named Spartacus. You've probably heard of him. Note that he was not a gladiator, but a gladiator in training, an enslaved person that was being forced to learn to fight and kill other enslaved people for entertainment purposes. But he never fights in an arena, because he fights his way out using kitchen implements instead. His exit is dramatic, so the story is passed along, and a lot more enslaved people hear about him. There are mass exoduses from the huge slave-run farms all over the Italian countryside. Before he knows it, Spartacus is leading a group of 70,000 refugees from Roman slavery. This is a direct result of small-time farmers being replaced by wealthy landlords running enormous estates with only slave labor. The Romans call it the Second Servile War because it is the second large-scale slave revolt in Roman history. A few informal militias are formed to deal with the problem, but Spartacus leads a makeshift army and defeats them, so the Senate delegates Crassus to go destroy the slave revolt. They'd have probably picked Pompey, but he is already fighting a war in Spain, so they settle for second fiddle. Crassus is granted 4 legions, but he already has 6 of his own, so 10 total. Warlords. Crassus is a more formidable foe, but it still takes some time to chase Spartacus's forces all over southern Italy. At one point, Spartacus hires some pirates to transport his refugees to Sicily, but the pirates double-cross him. They take his money and run. So the fighting goes on. It's clear Crassus will eventually win, but it's taking a long time, and the Senate gets nervous. Pompey sends word that he has won his war in Spain and is coming home, and they send word to him to bring his armies directly to southern Italy to help Crassus. Now Crassus is working extra hard. He knows if Pompey swoops in and wins the war, he'll get all the credit, even though Crassus did most of the work. Crassus defeats Spartacus, but about 5,000 rebels escape north and are captured by Pompey, who then gets to claim that he put a final end to the war in 71 BCE. Crassus is merciless toward his enslaved enemies. He takes 6,000 captives, and he has them all crucified along the Via Appia, bodies hanging for miles and miles for travelers to see. Rome is a slave state, and it relies on terror to keep big revolts like Spartacus's from happening. This horrific mass crucifixion is a message to deter other enslaved people from challenging Rome. Back in the city, Pompey gets a triumph. It's for his war in Spain, because no triumphs can be awarded for slave revolts. But of course, Spartacus is fresh on everyone's minds, so it feels like a triumph over Spartacus, and Crassus can't participate. Crassus burns with envy, as usual. Next, in 67 BCE, Pompey is granted unprecedented powers to deal with the piracy problem on the Mediterranean. In centuries prior, Syria, Egypt, and the Greek island of Rhodes used to keep piracy in check, but Rome's reckless expansion has weakened all these regions, so piracy has exploded. Pompey takes on 20 subordinates called legates, or legati, Latin for chosen. Unlike in the old Republic system, in which all underlings of a general are elected by assemblies or appointed by the Senate, legates are chosen freely by the general in charge, with no checks on his power to appoint whoever he'd like. This system will become a major tool of autocracy in imperial Rome. Pompey and his legates bring the pirates under control in only 3 months. This frees Pompey up to finally go defeat Mithridates, the eastern king that Sulla was fighting when he left to march on Rome in 82. Just like with Crassus against Spartacus, another Roman general was on the cusp of defeating Mithridates, but Pompey swoops in and takes all the glory. He then expands the war to conquer Syria and Judea, taking Jerusalem in 63 BCE. When Pompey is on his way home, Rome is fresh off the scare with Catiline. Pompey is now so powerful that there's a lot of anxiety in the Senate that he will march as another Sulla and take absolute power. But there's no motive for him to do so. He's a bit of a popularis, but he's no Gracchus or Catiline. He's not a reformer. He's not really concerned with anything other than his own personal power. And that is at its height, so he has no complaints. He comes home peacefully and celebrates some of the biggest, most elaborate triumphs Rome has ever seen. He now has wealth that makes the Hellenized nobles of the Punic Wars look like Cato the Younger. He builds an enormous new theater with a colossal statue of himself inside, holding a globe in his hand, the master of the world. And that's how he sees himself. He's by far the richest and most powerful man in Rome. All he needs is for the Senate to grant him land for his troops. And the Senate, because apparently they've learned nothing, refuses. Pompey didn't turn into Sulla because no one was challenging his power. Now the Senate challenges his power, and Pompey realizes he's going to need to work outside the system to get what he needs. This is the moment that all of Rome is suddenly distracted by Clodius and the Bona Dea scandal. With the spotlight off Pompey for a moment, the young upstart Julius Caesar comes to Pompey with a proposal. Caesar has been very successful. After his praetorship, he served as governor in Spain, gaining military glory and a lot of money. But not enough. He runs for the consulship of 59 BCE, and the race grows heated. The optimates unite to oppose him. Even incorruptible Cato the Younger resorts to bribery to try to defeat him. Caesar needs even more money to compete. He's already got a political alliance with Crassus, and now he reaches out to Pompey too. All three decide to cooperate. Caesar will become consul with the money and military support of Pompey and Crassus, and in exchange he will use his consulship to further their agendas, especially that land Pompey needs for his soldiers. The partnership is called the Triumvirate, which means 3 men. It's nothing formal or legal, it's just a partnership of warlords, formed specifically to steamroll over proper procedure and take whatever they want. And it works exactly as intended. Caesar wins his consulship in 59. His co-consul is a guy named Bibulus. He's one of Cato and the Optimates candidates, a mortal enemy of the warlords. Caesar tries to cooperate with him at first, but Bibulus only wants to block him. So Caesar ignores him and brings Pompey's land distributions directly to the people. Bibulus tries the old augury trick, tries to disband the assembly because of a bad omen. Caesar has the mob attack him. They smash Bibulus's fasces and pour a bucket of human waste over him. After this, Bibulus just stays in his house and steers clear of Caesar entirely. He impotently declares, "I'm watching the skies" from his porch, but no one cares. People joke that 59 is not the year of Caesar and Bibulus, but the year of Julius and Caesar. After his consulship, Caesar leaves for Gaul, which is modern-day France. It's standard practice now for ex-consuls to take governorships in the provinces. This is important to Caesar for 2 reasons. First, he is very much the junior partner of the Triumvirate. If he ever wants to rival Pompey and Crassus, he needs a big, loyal, battle-hardened army. He needs to become a proper warlord. Second, remember that public officials are immune from prosecution in court. By moving directly from his consulship to the proconsulship of Gaul with no interlude, Caesar stays immune. His political enemies are numerous, and they'd have a good case against him, because he did a lot of brazenly illegal stuff as consul. Indeed, it will be important for Caesar to maintain immunity for the rest of his life, as he will never be safe from legal action. In the meantime, the Triumvirate makes sure men loyal to them win all the consulships so they can continue to run Rome from behind the scenes. They've got Clodius as their attack dog, and an uneasy alliance with Cicero, and they're successful beyond their wildest hopes. Pompey and Crassus share another consulship in 55, then reward themselves with lucrative provinces. Pompey takes Spain, an area he's had a lot of experience in. He rules it with legates and stays in Rome to make sure everything runs as planned. Crassus takes Syria. It borders the Parthians, a wealthy Middle Eastern people who have been cruising toward a major war with Rome. If he can conquer the Parthians, Crassus will gain huge military glory and a lot of money, maybe even enough to finally eclipse his old rival Pompey. He does not conquer the Parthians. Crassus suffers a disastrous defeat at the Battle of Khari in 53 BCE. 50,000 Roman soldiers die, including Crassus himself and his son. There's a famous story that the Parthians execute Crassus by pouring molten gold down his throat to symbolize his insatiable hunger for wealth. It probably isn't true, but what an image! In the defeat, Crassus's army loses its legionary standards. Sidebar on Legionary Standards. A standard was a rallying point for a Roman legion, topped with a golden eagle. It was a piece of tactical equipment, telling soldiers where to move, but it was also a sacred object. Losing one to an enemy is a huge matter of shame, an insult to the gods, and a sign of extreme weakness and cowardice. Caesar later plans a whole war to get the standards back from the Parthians, though he doesn't get to fight it. It's his successor, Augustus, who finally wins them back, and it's such a big deal that he puts it on coins. Anyway, Crassus dies. It's only the latest blow to the Triumvirate. Oddly enough, if you put together 3 warlords whose goal is the highest possible personal glory and autocratic control of the entire Roman state, they won't rule in cooperation and harmony for very long. Who'd have guessed? At the beginning of their partnership, Pompey had married Caesar's daughter Julia to cement their alliance. Pompey is older than Caesar and becomes his son-in-law, which is super gross and very normal for upper-class Romans. But this marriage tie breaks in 54. Caesar's daughter dies in childbirth. Now Caesar is in Gaul, Pompey is in Rome, and Crassus is dead in the Middle East. The break is coming. Cue Clodius's death in January of 52. The people burn down the Senate House, which the Senate obviously takes as an emergency. They pass a Senatus Consultum Ultimum, but this time it's not clear what needs to be done to protect the city. The rebellion is because of Clodius, but they can't kill him because he's already dead. So they vote to name Pompey sole consul. Why they went with the unprecedented title of sole consul instead of dictator is beyond me. Pompey puts Milo on trial for the murder of Clodius and has him exiled, despite a stirring defense by Clodius's old enemy Cicero. Milo's punishment satisfies the people's rage, and Pompey's presence as a strong, experienced leader comforts them. Crisis averted. At this point, the optimates start to cozy up to Pompey. You might remember that they were his staunch opponents not long before, but now they're coming around to Cicero's point of view, that Pompey is the lesser of 2 evils next to Caesar. And Caesar has made his ambitions quite clear. He has ruthlessly pursued war in Gaul, using every minor disturbance as an excuse to expand his war and add territory to his province. He sends back mind-boggling amounts of gold into the Roman treasury, not to mention a lot of enslaved people. And he writes down his exploits so that the people know exactly where all this money is coming from and how good a leader he is. Of course, these are the Gauls he's conquering, the barbarians who burned Rome to the ground in 390 BCE, Rome's scariest adversaries. Not only that, he carries the war into Britain, the first Roman general to lead an expedition there. It's a failure, but Britain still seems semi-mythical to most Romans, so it's impressive anyway. By the time he defeats the rebellion of the Gallic general Vercingetorix in 52 BCE, Caesar is exactly what he set out to be, a triumphant general with a huge loyal battle-hardened army, a massive fortune, and a groundswell of public support in Rome. He is, in short, a warlord. No more junior partner, Caesar is now a full rival for Pompey, who is past his prime after years of sitting in Rome. But remember, Caesar is relying on the legal immunity of his offices. While he is officially a proconsul in Gaul, he cannot be prosecuted by his many political rival for all the illegal stuff he's done to gain and maintain power. His proconsulship is nearing its end, so he sends word to Pompey requesting that it be extended. Pompey refuses the request. When Caesar pushes it, Pompey declares Caesar's war illegal and demands he return to Rome. He has a point. Caesar went to Gaul as governor to manage the province, and has transparently warmongered to commit genocide on the Gauls. Not that Pompey really cares about genocide. His objection is Caesar's power, not his monstrosity. So Caesar has a choice, the same choice as Sulla a generation earlier. Lay down his command and come back to Rome peacefully to face trial, or turn his army against his homeland. We all know how this story ends. The Senate issues a Senatus Consultum Ultimum in the winter, assuming nothing will happen right away because the campaigning season is over. But they underestimate Caesar. He marches 1 legion of his army out of his province on January 10th, 49 BCE. Leaving his province with a legion still under arms is an act of war, the moment of his treason. The border of his province is the Rubicon River in northern Italy, and that's what he crosses to trigger civil war. Even today, we use the phrase crossing the Rubicon to mean taking a consequential act we can't take back, a point of no return. When he crosses the Rubicon, Caesar is supposed to have said, alia jacta est, the die has been cast. Die meaning like dice, the game pieces. Once you've rolled the die, whatever happens, happens. Crossing the Rubicon is characteristic of Caesar's speed and decisiveness, and of his lack of scruples and willingness to do anything to protect his personal glory. The people mainly side with Caesar, who is a popular hero, while the Senate mainly sides with Pompey and the optimates. Caesar marches right through Italy with little resistance. Pompey has been away from his legions too long and needs time to put a fighting force together, so he and his allies flee Rome for the east. Caesar therefore takes Rome without a fight. He only stays there for about 2 weeks, then moves east to challenge Pompey. Pompey wants to keep running, but the optimates push him. They don't want Fabian tactics, they want victory. So Caesar and Pompey's forces meet at the Battle of Farsalus in 48. Caesar wins and famously refuses to execute enemy combatants or hold them prisoner. Caesar positions himself as the opposite of Sulla. Instead of persecuting and executing his political enemies, he shows them clementia, or mercy. He releases any Roman he captures, no matter if they plan on rejoining Pompey's armies or not. Many of them join up with Caesar instead. The optimates scatter. Pompey himself flees to Egypt. He's had a good relationship with the ruling dynasty there and thinks the king will keep him safe. But as soon as Pompey arrives, advisors of the child king Ptolemy XIII have him beheaded. Caesar arrives a few days later, and Ptolemy presents him with a gift, Pompey's head in a basket. Ptolemy's advisors were hoping to make an ally of Caesar by executing his enemy, but instead, Caesar weeps at the sight of his old friend's head. And that, I think, is an appropriate image to leave on. Pompey and Caesar were rivals, then incredibly dominant allies, until they turned on each other and became combatants in a civil war. Now Pompey is dead, and Caesar is the undisputed sole ruler of Rome. I could build up a lot of suspense about what's going to happen in the next video, but odds are you already know how Caesar's story is going to end. Next week, beware the Ides of March.